Perkins has now proven that he can apply himself. He can sit down. He can study the solvers. Is that a concern with you, given like the odds that you laid 2 years ago when you were like negotiating with him?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lower expectation about my edge than I did before the Landon Tice match. He's obviously hyper intelligent. The question was, could he apply himself? I remember my first time playing 300, 600. I was like, I want to try 300, 600. Who's sitting in the lobby? Oh, Phil Ivey. Okay. There was that period where when I played the highest stakes, I game selected because I accidentally cut off most of my bankroll. If we're all game selecting so much, then like the action's going to be bad.
For the longest time, I've wanted to create a platform where I can have deeper and more intimate conversations with some of the poker world's most brilliant and talented minds openly, in the hopes that what they have to share, the insights that they give, can provide some form of value to the rest of the poker community. Before we jump into the show, I would love for you guys to just hit the like button and the subscribe button. You have no idea how much it helps us as a brand to push the videos to a wider reach and audience. And without further ado, sit back and I hope you enjoy this conversation with a very special guest. Peace.
So for my first guest, I'm getting to have a conversation with someone who I personally have admired and respected from afar for so much of my life. And within the last couple of years, I've managed to actually, genuinely honored to be able to call him a friend. It's my natural choice as someone who has influenced my life in a huge way over the last couple of years. And honestly, every time we have a phone call, I end up leaving the phone call regretting that we didn't hit the record button, even when it's to do with like the Overbet Express business stuff or poker related stuff or whatever. My life is just crashing and burning. And, you know, who do you call? Well, the man that's coming on today is the man that normally has all the answers. And yeah, I'm so glad that we get to hit the record button and I get to use you as my guinea pig, I guess, today as my first guest. Is the level of integrity and earnestness of you, Phil, is, you know, admirable. And it's a person, or you're a person, sorry, I should say, that I believe we could, all agree upon that if we tried to be a little bit more like you, the world would be better off for it. It's obviously Mr. Phil Galfond. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Henry. Thank you very much for the very, very kind intro. Not sure what to say. But I'm happy to be your guinea pig, and hopefully I can live up to all of that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I was listening to a lot of previous podcasts, taking notes from some of the people in our space that obviously do an amazing job when it comes to interviewing people within the poker world. And a lot of their intros were like, well, this man doesn't need an introduction. We should all know him. But for the few people out there who maybe don't know who Mr. Falcons is, Mr. Galfond is, there you go. We gave him a bit of introduction this time around. But yeah, how have you been, Phil? I thought, you know, it's the end of 2021. The year started off for you on the felt as usual. Part of the Galfond challenge. You wrapped up the match against Chance. You had the match against Brandon this year. It's been a pretty chilled year compared to last year, where it was very Galfond challenge intense. How are you feeling at the end of this year?
I feel all right. I do miss playing the challenges. You know, even the Brandon one, which was more recent, it was a very short challenge. So Chance was the last kind of real long poker like stretch that I've played. And I even skipped the World Series outside of a couple of online events this year. I've just been super busy, actually, with Run It Once stuff behind the scenes, and hopefully some things that can share more details on in the near future. But yeah, I've been keeping busy with that, keeping busy with being a dad, and just always keeping busy.
Keep it busy with a dad. Let's dive straight into that, I guess. Like life as a dad. You know, put that side to side with running a business, being a family man, being a husband, being a high-stakes poker professional. Spencer turning 3 in December, by the way, boys and girls, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So raising a young family, not only whilst, you know, running the business and issuing this challenge, but also during the height of a global pandemic. What's that experience kind of been like for you over the last couple of years?
Well, you know, I don't have much to compare it to, but it's, I mean, it's fun and it's a grind. I took on a lot is basically what I keep taking on a lot. I keep doing it to myself. And I had a business, had a poker career. Let's launch another business, and then let's play some extended heads up challenges, which were more all consuming than I expected. And then of course, becoming a father. It's a lot, but a lot of people deal with a lot. We all have the same number of hours in our days and weeks, and I don't know. Most people feel them too. I think actually being a dad kind of made that more obvious to me. Just looking at Farah's day to day being a mom. Like for both of us, there's just no downtime. You're like I'm in here working, and then I'm done, and then immediately I'm helping out until Spencer goes to bed, and then we go to bed soon after because we have to wake up with him in the morning, and she's doing it all day. I mean, he just started school recently, so sometimes she's doing other things, but every parent does this, and actually, I mean, yes, running two businesses and trying to play poker sounds like a lot, and it is, but I still have some control over my own hours. I don't commute to work. There was a stretch in early in Run It Once Poker's, it was pre-launch actually, that I spent a few months in Malta and working from the office, and I would go in every day. And I mean, I was working long hours because, it's a startup and my business, but I just couldn't believe, you commute. It was like 30-minute commute. You wake up, shower, get ready, 30-minute commute, you come back home, you do that all day, you come back home, and there's not really time left. And that's what a lot of people do. So I don't know. I feel like I feel like I have so much going on, but I just know that so many people, even if it's just one thing or two things, just hours wise, everybody's grinding.
Everybody's grinding. Just to pick up on a few things that you said there. Firstly, can we all just take a moment to appreciate the wonderful Farah Galfond, who not only when you're grinding the challenges is your biggest fan on social media, and she's she doesn't mind going after some people in the poker world as well. If they come after Mr. Clay Aiken, it's gloves are off. We're stepping in the ring. But yeah, like you said, having that support, if you will, partner, I guess, to just help you be as balanced as possible. And yeah, I think that's obviously, I can only assume that helps you a lot when it comes to this business side of things and working, and when the challenges are live, takes away a bit of the pressure involved. And then the second thing that you mentioned, with Spencer, is that it's something completely brand new. It's nothing that you can plan for. People can kind of, I guess, give you advice ahead of time. But I mean, the thing that I've heard the most is, Henry, you're 27 now, and when it happens, you'll realize that you don't know what tired is until you have a kid, and trying to put that alongside playing poker for a living, and then on top of this, running the businesses and whatnot, I can only assume that there have been some very restless nights in the Galfond household.
It is just, you can't really be prepared for it from what people tell you. I was pretty confident going in. I've had a lot of experience with kids. I'm the oldest of three siblings, and my sister's 8-9 years younger, and then we also have 6 cousins that are much younger, that we're very close to. And so I would watch, as I was a teenager, I was babysitting those kids or hanging out with them all the time. Then I worked as a camp counselor. I mean, obviously that's older kids, but up to as young as 6 or 7. And I also did one summer as it was like a tutoring center for young 5 to 10-year-olds. So I've had a lot of experience with kids, but it's just so different when it's your own, and there's no off switch. There's no end to it. And the biggest, I'm making it sound bad. It's also, I mean, it's really hard and it's really great, which is what every parent will tell you, I think. But yeah, the part that I was unprepared for was just like, I don't know, even when I was doing so much with work, but before Spencer, I could finish a day, and yeah, like sometimes I'll still respond to emails on my phone, but I could finish a day and watch a couple hours of TV. And like, I can't do that right now. There's just the day ends and he goes to bed and then I go to sleep.
Oh man, I didn't realize firstly how big your family was, and then your extended family, and it kind of feels like a natural segue into something that we're going to discuss towards the end of the show, but might as well bring it up now, which is your competitiveness. And now that I've found out that information about you having quite a large family growing up, what could you just like go into a bit of detail in regards to that upbringing in your childhood, hanging out with a bunch of kids or a large group of kids or extended family, and especially being the eldest? Did you feel like you took on more of a, not necessarily like a parental role, but more like the role model of the group when it came to your younger siblings and your cousins? Or was it more of a, I don't know how to word this, like, was there still a lot of competition between you and the family, even though you were the eldest? Were you still challenged by your siblings and by your cousins?
No, there wasn't much competition. I mean, so my brother's the closest in age to me. He's 3 years younger than me, and we would have probably a relatively normal sibling relation. We fought a lot as kids, not physically so much, but no, I wouldn't say we were that competitive. And then my sister was young enough that, I mean, I didn't even fight with my sister at all, and I would help out, but I was not. But by the time my cousins came around, I was in my early teens, and I almost, for the oldest ones. And so like by the time I was in my late teens and the rest of them were coming, I felt more like an uncle, I think, than a cousin. And so I don't know if I consider myself, I just felt like an uncle, honestly, more than, and as far as, yeah, I guess I did feel like a role model to my brother and sister a little bit, but nothing. Yeah. I think that I've always been a competitive person, but mostly with myself. I've always wanted to think that I could achieve a lot, and I wanted to challenge myself to do so, I guess.
Okay, that's really interesting. It's really interesting because you've mentioned in previous podcasts, that, and it's definitely this way for me. Like whenever we've spoken, and maybe I've been vulnerable in a conversation, or I've ran a spot past you, for example, to just get like the quick Galfond thoughts on a hand. You've never been the type of person where I've felt like, but this guy is insanely competitive. When it's come to like feedback, it's just always been, it's been more so, yeah, kind of like the uncle loving, caring like feedback. But it's interesting because in previous podcasts, when you said that people don't think you're that competitive, and I've certainly got that vibe. But then obviously we now know, well, not just only for your career, but after the Galfond challenge over the last 2 years, that you compete on the highest level and you are extremely competitive. So is that just you competing with yourself then? Is it just to like prove to yourself that you can do these things? Or because I just struggle to see how I'm struggling. I'm thinking of how I want to word this, because it might just be an insecurity of my own, but yeah, I'm just struggling to see how you can come across the way you do in person, and the way that you carry yourself away from the poker table, and then behind closed doors just kind of go into this different mode, this like beast mode, if you will, where you are just ready to complete the challenge at task and just be as competitive as you need to be in order to complete what needs to be completed. And then just switch that back on and off, depending on the situation, if you will.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, so I have a lot of thoughts, but let's see where we go. I think so when I was like, I mean, I don't remember this time, but when I was like 1, 2, and 3, and I like peaked as a 1-year-old. Like with stories my mom tells, I was a super genius 1-year-old. And I think I've talked to Elliot Rowe about this a lot, but I think what happened is, early in my life, I was told how smart I was and was told, I can do great things. I can do whatever I want. And I believed that story. I internalized that. I told myself that I had so much potential, but did I really believe it? I didn't know. And I wanted to prove it to myself that was true, if that makes sense. So I think that has made me always, I guess what I mean is I told myself this story that everybody was telling me that I could do great things. And I believed in it and I liked it. And so I wanted to hold on to it. So I wanted to make it true, is the way that I would put that. And so there's and it's another thing. I tweeted about this a little bit once with some of my work with Elliot, where he helped me realize that I was afraid to kind of try really hard and fail. Actually coming back into poker specifically, but generally I've always been that way, and it's because I want to hold on to this image of myself that I'm great, but I don't. I'm not sure that I believe it, and I don't want to find out that I'm wrong. And so I either, throughout my life, I either would not try at something or do something I was very naturally good at, and then try very hard to make sure that I kept that image of myself in my head.
See, this is exactly why I wanted to click the record button on this, because these are the exact the nuggets of insight that you give, because that for me personally just gets me very, I don't know, the hairs on my arms are standing up, because I feel like that's a challenge that a lot of poker players can probably relate to, is not wanting other people to forget the genius that once was when you were, in grade school, in high school, growing up. Henry, when you were 7, you were the best at math in your class of 30, and having that carried with you. And obviously you then grow up and you mature as an adult and you start figuring things out on your own, and you're like, okay, were my parents just telling me this because they're my parents? Or, was my high school teacher telling me this just because he was my high school teacher? Because now in the real world, I'm trying these things and things aren't working out as well as they were when I was a kid. I'm starting to fail in certain areas where people were telling me my whole life that I was going to do great things. And that seems like something that you've battled with over the years, or at least you've got plenty of experience in. How do you push past that initial fear? Because for me personally, and again, I'm sure that there are poker players at home listening, just people in general, the fear of failure is obviously something we all have to overcome. But when you have been told your whole life by those close to you that you're going to go on and achieve great things, when that doubt starts to sink in, I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you end up just kind of picking yourself back up and overcoming that doubt and not letting it sink in? Because I feel like once you plant that seed of doubt, it can very quickly do a full 180 on what you've been told your whole life about, you're going to do great things and whatnot. And that, for me personally, has stopped me from starting this podcast. It's stopped me from doing a lot of things in recent years. And I'm sure there are people out there who have been held back because of it, precisely that fear and that doubt.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the unfortunate thing is it'd be better if we all just understood that, like, you want to feel good about yourself, and so you're told all these nice things about yourself, and then you attach so much worth to those. So I'm good because I'm so smart and I'm going to do great things. Whereas, like, what we should be learning, I think, but how do you, is just, being a nice person and like, tending to your relationships and just, being any kind of positive. Anyways, like, it shouldn't matter to us, or at least, we can still want great things, but what would be ideal is if we, attach our self-worth to things that were actually more important, like who we are to the people close to us, who we are to the whole world, perhaps. What I worked on with Elliot, I think was helpful. He in his course on Run It Once, actually, is where I did it, not even directly with him, but he had me kind of go through the scenario that I'm afraid of. I might be misremembering all the steps, but kind of go through the scenario I'm afraid of, write out what's the worst outcome that could happen. What's the best outcome that could happen in a scenario where the worst outcome happens? What would you do then? And I think I think that made me less afraid, but it's not gone. That it still existed. But I did find that exercise helpful because I realized, okay, so let's say I start studying solvers and, like, it's just not sinking in. I'm not getting it, because that was my biggest fear. Is like I was never somebody who studied very hard in school. My memory is not it's average or maybe subpar. So, like, I thought I'd have to go in and memorize and process all this data and memorize it and, like, really grind, which, I mean, you do kind of have to really grind, but I was afraid that I would go in and, it wouldn't click. And so, yeah, he said, well, I went through what would I do in that scenario. And it's, I would actually forget what I said I would do. Yeah, I might even have it in front of me, which is funny. I was looking at these papers that I have on my desk. I put these back.
Wait, you came into this podcast prepared, did you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was looking at these like 2 weeks ago, and then I didn't clean my desk. So I wonder if they're in here. I mean, I think they're in here. No, I think it was maybe a different packet of papers. But all right, I don't know. I think I just said I would, approach it a different way, or kind of take what I did learn and kind of just, accept that I've made incremental progress, go about studying in a different way, maybe reviewing hand histories, start playing so that I would find motivation to study the hands that I was playing, like, just figure out what does work, because I'm capable of learning one way or another. So that helped me, I guess, a little bit overcome the fear.
Yeah, a couple of pointers or things that I wanted to touch on there. I guess, firstly, we have all been in a position where the worst case scenario has happened, and more often than not, we've got through it. We're alive, we're okay, we kind of overcame it. And I mean, I remember my grandparents, when it came to something that I would be afraid of, because I was very adventurous as a child, but I would only do things if I saw people do it before me. I would need that, like, I need to see it with my own eyes. And then whenever I would do something, my grandparents would be like, see, what's the worst that could happen? And then when I did it, it would be like, see, it wasn't too bad, right? And your initial reaction is, oh yeah, but I had to do this. I had to apply myself and study or whatever. But the truth is, once the dust settles, you actually realize that, okay, well, actually, yeah, it wasn't too bad. I had survived the worst. And that kind of pushes you to just continue to try things that you're not maybe comfortable with trying, and you kind of overcome that fear. And then the second thing was that you touched on was when you spoke with Elliot in regards to studying solvers. So I guess we can backtrack a couple of years to November 2019, when this whole issue arose for you, to start studying with solvers, the reason for that was because you decided to take on the world pretty openly in a very public challenge, which has been touched on by many people. But as we're wrapping up the year and we've had a couple more Galfond challenge matches completed this year, why not take another dive into the Galfond challenge? And I'm going to just show the viewers at home, and I know you've already obviously seen this because you typed it up yourself, but the initial Galfond challenge heads up battle, which was posted in a thread or on a forum, over on Run It Once, say, who wants to play some high stakes poker with a washed up ex-pro? Hey all, I just have a quick post for you today, but I'll be back with some more updates in the very near future. I'm looking for some high stakes heads up action to help promote Run It Once poker, and I'd like it to be a challenge that we can build some hype around. My first idea was one that was also related to Rio trading, and then you put out that it couldn't be Rio coaches, sorry Source and the rest of the boys, but it quickly obviously got a lot of attention. I don't know how serious people took it at first, whether they were like, oh, what's Phil trying to achieve here? But it was pretty evident after day one. He then put out a tweet saying, one day since I posted the heads up challenge, I have 11 challenges and counting, blown away by the response. And they just kept on coming through. So quite a few things that I wanted to dive into in regards to where you were at with your poker game and then issuing the challenge. But let's start off with the challenge itself. So when you posted the challenge and then this tweet, what was your vision for it? Were you thinking just 6 months, some quick fire matches, get a lot of promo for Run It Once, or were you expecting it to go on as long as it has? End of 2021, and you still have matches to play?
No, the former. I was expecting it to be a lot quicker. I thought I would take the 6 month trip outside of the US and just kind of bang these all out. And what I learned, I underestimated or I guess overestimated the number of hands you could play per hour. I also underestimated how draining it would be. So when I was talking to different challengers, I was like, okay, so let's play, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And they were like, no, let's do 3 or 4. And I was like, come on, let's do that. And then I actually played, and I was like, oh, okay. It is really draining to do this day in and day out. I kind of forgot about that, or have gotten older, or both. But yeah, I underestimated how much I was kind of biting off. And actually that happened, I think, to a lot of, like I said, 11 people reached out, but by the end of it, and more people reached out after that, but by the end of it, a lot of them, decided against playing. I think because it's exciting it sounds fun, and it is fun to do a heads up challenge, and but then as you start to think through the logistics and the impact it's going to have on your life, you're going to have to spend this time not doing other things. You're going to have to study, prep for this challenge specifically, and take however many months and play it. I think a lot of people realize that, they didn't want to take all of that on, and I did. I didn't change my mind about that. I was excited to take it on and play some poker, but yeah, it took and is taking much longer than I expected it to.
Do you think there's anyone that then agreed to the T's and C's that underestimated how difficult, not only playing against, elite competition on a high level, but as you said, a lot of the people, when you were saying, oh, let's do 6 days, they were like, actually, Phil, let's maybe do 3 or 4. Is there anyone that you think that maybe, like you said, bit off more than they could chew when it came to the amount of hands and hours that you were playing?
I don't think so.
And therefore, maybe affected their game a little bit?
I honestly don't think so. I think that all of us, and I think I spoke with almost everybody about this, but yeah, I think all of us were surprised by how draining it was, and actually how it was more stressful than just playing, because like most of these people play high stakes. And I remember talking to Action Freak specifically. He was like very surprised by how much more intense this was than just waking up, hopping on, Stars 5100 Zoom, playing for 6 hours and then stopping. Like, to have the schedule, to have everybody watching, to not be able to change your mind if you don't want to, play another 10,000 hands or play the rest of the week. It's just it's a very different thing than even grinding the same number of hours or more hours even. Just heads up cash on your own schedule and not in front of the world.
Yeah, just having to show up even if you're having a bad day, and we definitely,
oh yeah,
especially with poker and the swings and variance involved, there are going to be bad days, man, and having to show up. I don't know. I feel like when the challenge was announced and we had more and more people come through, there are a lot of people claiming that they could step up to the plate, and then quickly got quietened over the course of the last 2 years. I haven't heard much from Luke Schwartz. Luke, how's it going, man? Any matches coming up with Luke? I don't know. I was gonna bring that up as well. That was meant to be a challenge, and all of a sudden the Solve for Why notes have disappeared, and now we haven't heard anything.
I mean, Luke hasn't backed out. He couldn't do it in the times that I could that year, and then since then he's reached out a couple times over the last year and a half. And for a while, I'm in the US. We don't really know. We've been trying to work it out. So, but very slowly. And I think it's not really a priority for either of us, to be honest. So I don't really feel like going, especially it's been a while since I played mixed games. So I have to refresh again, take some time out of everything else I'm doing, spend some time studying mixed games. But he reached out for the second. I mean, he reached out recently and I said, I'm stuck in Vegas for a while. Are you coming to the World Series? I asked him if he was coming to this World Series. Maybe we could play it live. But he wasn't coming to this World Series. Obviously, there's been, COVID. So we've been in different places and not really had it lined up. We also never, we don't even have terms. The way the challenge went is I proposed, he said something on, I don't remember the exact thing, but he said something on Twitter. I proposed terms. Then we talked privately and he was like, that's too many hands. Let's do something smaller. And I said, okay, cool. We'll, figure it out. And that was kind of it.
Yeah.
So we don't have a challenge. We don't have a bet, but I think we're both still willing to play, but not willing to massively inconvenience ourselves to complete it.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the way that the whole match, if you will, came about was when you were getting kind of bashed around the park by Venny, and there were a lot of people that were like, oh, let's try and get some of Galfond's money. And Luke's a character. I do love him. He's so entertaining on TV over the years, and I think it was just another, for a lot of people it felt like, oh, let's beat the man whilst he's down kind of thing. And let's put a challenge out there. But hey, listen, if he's still reaching out and he's trying to, get the match going, then fair play to the guy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend.
He hasn't backed out at all.
No, fair play to him. He's, sometimes you bite off more than you can chew on Twitter. Twitter's poker Twitter especially is a weird place to be sometimes. And if you're gonna, bark a lot, you need to learn how to bite. So if he's going to challenge you, then fair play. I would love to see that, by the way. There are some legends on the Run It Once training roster that I feel like could provide some very valuable commentary insights as well to mixed games. So if that ever does happen, that would be definitely a fun one. But just to kind of touch on Twitter, I guess, and how, especially with poker Twitter, I don't know, man. There are times where I'm scrolling through poker Twitter and I'm just like, I love this community. There's like things that we do that just really makes you proud to be a poker player and to be a part of the community. And then there are times where I'm just like, I just want to log off Twitter for a month. I'm just like, you know what? I can't deal with this anymore. And it's a weird space. But anyways, the point I was trying to make is Twitter beef, if you will, and being a public figure such as yourself and issuing such a public challenge. Even if you win every match with, you know, zero doubt in people's minds that you are the better player, even if you win every match, you know, effortlessly, there are still going to be people that come gunning for you, no matter, you know, who you are, what you do, whether you're the nicest person in the world or whatever. And I wanted to kind of just discuss how, I mean, are you paying attention to all of the tweets that you put out when you put out these challenges? And especially with Veni, for example, there was a point where you needed to take a break when you were down, you know, just over 900K. So firstly, you know, you're losing a match, a very publicly covered match that you issued. You're playing against an opponent that everyone's saying is, you know, X amount of solvers and years ahead of you, game theory wise. And then you have a lot of people who don't even know you, don't even know the work that you've put in, don't even know what you're doing behind closed doors, don't understand variance, don't even, you know, let's just call a spade, probably aren't even beating, you know, 100 PLO online. But then they're coming for you, they're spamming comment sections, they're not saying the nicest things. How do you deal with such adversity, I guess, is what I'm trying to like get to, when you are in such a public light like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's what I signed up for. You know, the reason that heads up challenges are popular and kind of the upside of doing heads up challenges, getting all eyes on you and you know, on Run It Once, is because people enjoy speculating about who's the better player, and they like to comment on, you know, we all like to be armchair quarterbacks. And I don't know. I did. I mean, I probably didn't. I'm sure I didn't see every comment. Especially like, I mean, on Twitch, I wasn't following the streams, but you know, I'd see a lot of them on Twitter. I mean, to be honest, the comments didn't bother me. What bothered me was, or bothered's the wrong word, I thought that I had made a lot of progress and was learning the game well, and I really wanted to prove myself, not necessarily to the people making those comments, but just, you know, people were watching, the poker community was watching. And so I wanted to prove myself to the poker community at large, and honestly to myself a little bit. But it had nothing to do with the comments. If nobody said anything, I would have felt the same way. And if I had 10 times more people coming out of the woodwork to tell me how much I sucked, I would have felt the same way. So it was really just the fact that I was getting smashed was the hard part, not the comments I was receiving.
That's interesting.
So
it was more.
We've talked about,
weren't performing.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit in that, or I don't know, I don't mind getting comments. I would say I'm more sensitive than the average person. Maybe not by a huge amount, but, and so like some things, comments can hurt me, but when it's comments about my poker game, or like when it's comments about something that I'm just very confident in, it doesn't bother me. I think, you know, getting negative comments about things that kind of make you, well, not necessarily make you question yourself, but yeah, if they make you question yourself, or are about like the way that, I'm having trouble putting it into words, but you know, like comments about, like, let's say that someone watches this and says, you know, Phil, you said this thing during the podcast and it was really insensitive to this group of people, and you didn't realize how that would make me feel, and like that was whatever. Something like that would bother me. And first of all, because I would think about, oh, I messed up. But second of all, you know, I don't know, I guess perhaps, I don't know if it has to do with it's like a comment on personality or on the kind of person that I am that would affect me more than a comment about just a skill. Comment about a skill, I don't know, doesn't bother me.
And it's a skill that you've kind of proven to yourself, right? I assume that you've already you've overcome that. You know that you're very good at poker and PLO. So you know the casual troll here and there, or people coming for you. So it sounds more so like maybe like your values, or what you kind of like represent. Like if people came after that, or made you, or started questioning you as a person, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
I think if I were to put like an umbrella term over the areas that would affect me more, it would be like socially. Like if people are commenting on, it's just things that fall into like, it's a socialization, I guess.
Okay. It's interesting because one of the things that I pointed out in my show notes was the Brandon Adams scuffle, if you will, from this summer. And it was the first time, I mean, I'm not sitting here claiming that I've known you for the last 20 years, but it was the first time where I felt like you, how do I want to word this? You kind of, I don't know, you kind of, it felt like you dug your heels in a bit, and really, it felt like you were adamant on defending your values and your integrity in that spot, because that is kind of what was being questioned. I'm gonna bring it up for the viewers at home. And by the way, this has all been resolved. I'm not going after Brandon or anything. The challenges or the match has been completed, but he tweeted saying, Phil Galfond and I have had a very civil match up until now, but we are paused due to an argument. We need help via Twitter. And it was to do with the clock that you guys were using in game. These were pre-agreed upon terms. If I'm not mistaken, it was 15 seconds pre-flop, 15 seconds flop turn, and then 30 seconds river.
Might have been 30 turn and river. I forget though. Something like that.
Okay. And he was basically saying towards the end of the match, he's down a couple of buy-ins, I believe like 45, 50K with, 15 hours left. So still a decent chunk of the 40 hours that had been agreed upon. And he was saying that you were changing strategy as expected, but that you were using the clock to the maximum advantage, taking full time for every decision on every street. And that was, I don't know Brandon personally, but it kind of felt like you're taking this publicly, even though I guess it is a public match, but you're kind of shining a bad light on the match firstly, in terms of like just game integrity. And also something like a tweet like that could be taken out of context so easily, especially on Twitter, especially at poker Twitter. People start twisting things and start making accusations when they have close to zero information, or they've only heard one side of the story. And it felt like that was the first time that I had kind of seen a side of you where you really it felt like you were defending yourself there, and you had a fight that you needed to fight. Could you just like dive into that? Firstly, what I wanted to know was like, did that add fuel to the fire from a competitive point of view? Like, were you like, oh, like, holy shit, I'm gonna smoke this guy now? Like, or was it like, let's resolve this first and then we'll worry about the competition afterwards? Like, and is there any bad blood? Like, also, after all
no,
of that?
there's no bad blood from my end. I don't think there is from his either. I mean, I was upset at the time, and it seemed like he was too. I I got I would understand his stance, or I did understand his stance kind of generally, but I thought that we had kind of clearly agreed upon rules, and he had already shown that throughout the match that he was going to use the clock to his advantage. So I felt like I had to do the same. And so it was kind of black and white in my mind. And I've actually I think never, I've not stalled in tournaments. I don't think I ever have. Maybe I have to a minor amount in an online tournament somewhere, but I think I never have, even though I think it's not wrong to. I just don't like it. I don't like it for the game. And so I totally get that sentiment. But in this case, it was more I guess because it's heads up and one-on-one, and I felt like he would absolutely do the same, and already was to a smaller extent early on, that it was just like a very clear black and white fairness is I have to do this to protect myself. And then when it got taken to Twitter, I was rattled by it. And I think I played a bit worse. But he told me, he's like, we were arguing about it for a while, and he said, I want to take this to Twitter. And I was like, all right, whatever. So he didn't just spring that on me, without telling me.
Oh, so you were playing live, and you were having this back and forth, debate, if you will. And then he was like, okay, listen, I need to get more opinions on this. I'm going to take this to Twitter.
Yeah. And as far as competition wise, I think in the moment I was mostly just rattled a bit. And then when what ended up happening is he closed the gap quite a bit, and then offered I don't know if I'd call it a settlement, but maybe a settlement, because the way we had our terms is that if he won, he would have to play me in an online match, and if I won, he would not. This is the terms we came to a while ago. And so he said, how about we just wash this? I was up 15K at the time with, I don't know how much time left. I was probably 75% to win.
Okay.
And he said, how about we wash this and we just play the online match? And I liked that. At that point, I liked it. I was kind of upset with myself and the situation that I'd gotten to that point, because I think I played worse after our argument. And so I did have a competitive drive, not so much that I wanted to crush him or punish him, but I did say to myself, and probably to somebody else, I have to make sure that I win more in the online challenge than I would have won live had it played out the way that I thought it should. Because we also ended up getting a ruling on number of hands left, and that's how we did it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like the ruling, and so I was I felt I just wanted to. I felt like should have been 95% plus to win by a small margin and then win the side bet. But I just told myself, I have to win more online. Otherwise, I guess otherwise I would have been disappointed in myself for not handling that better, I guess.
So you weren't happy with Ike's and Max Silver's final ruling on the...
No, I obviously
number of hands
respect it. I don't know, I respect it, and I don't think there's a clear answer, but it was not what I would have gone with.
So it kind of got taken on online, and you said, "Hey, sorry, Mike McDonald, for wasting time, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact tweet." And then you agreed to play. It was 10,000 hands, 100, 200 PLO. Am I right in saying that was the side bet changed for the online, or was it?
Yes,
it was,
online.
Yeah.
I laid him 4-1.
Your 400K to hit, yeah. Your 400K to his 100K. Yeah. And then 2,900 hands in, you're up just shy of 300K and the towel gets thrown in. But here's the thing, on the Run It Once website, it still says status in progress. It does. So I don't know who are we going after. Is it Run It Once Nick? Is he? But I was wondering, is that over, or is that just leaving a question mark in all of our heads that may
someone's getting yelled at, Henry. Yeah.
I apologize. Whoever that is that's getting. I was looking at that and I was like, Phil's normally really on top of these things. So if it still says in progress, maybe there's something that we haven't heard. Maybe Brandon just was like, you know what, I'm done with stepping in the ring for a bit, but yeah, take some time off and maybe come back into it.
He said something.
But
like,
so
it's funny. In one of the emails, we settled up and we're just catching up on stuff, and he said something like, he said it jokingly, like maybe we'll run it back at 8-1 or something. I forget what he said, but I think he was wanting me to say, okay, but I didn't. So, but maybe there'll be something in the future. I don't know.
Your eyes lit up. At least you've got a potential challenge in the background, which is another thing that I wanted to discuss, because obviously when you issued this challenge, nobody in the world knew what we were going to go into over the next, it's still going on with over the last 2 years. And if I'm not mistaken, when we wrapped up the match against Chance Corneth, that was played on WSOP.com. You were both in Vegas, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and you kind of issued a challenge within a challenge, if like saying that you're open to take on new challengers if they can get to Vegas and play on WSOP.com because you can't leave Vegas. And you mentioned that there were hopefully a couple of people that didn't take you up on that offer, but being a man of your word, you said that the challenge is open. Is there any news that has come out over the last 6 months? Any talks of anyone, Jungle Man? Anything about the side bets on that, or when the Perkins match is going to resume? Can we see you on our screens, or expect to see you on our screens within the next 3 or 4 months?
I've talked to each of them. I checked in with Perkins, I want to say a month ago, and he says he hasn't forgotten about me. But I'm waiting to hear. I'll bug him again at some point. But with Jungle, we talked. He was in Vegas when he won the Poker Players Championship.
Of course.
And I texted him and asked if he wanted to stick around for a week or two and just crank it out. And he was too busy. He said we could play a couple of days, and I said I don't really want to play like 1 day or 2 days. Yeah. It's a whole thing. You have to set up. It's a whole thing. Yeah. So, Jungle and I are going to play. Bill and I are going to play. We already started the match with the bet, so it's on. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know when.
You're like, Jungle, you've got this newly found liquid cash.
Yeah, exactly.
How about we jump into the ring? And now he's too busy filming all these Run It Once trading promo videos and teaser videos, like the insights to a crusher's mindset. And shout out to, if I'm not mistaken, that's Mikey and the team doing some of that content. That's I don't know, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Jungle makes me laugh so much sometimes, and some of the stuff that goes through his head doesn't surprise me whatsoever. So boys and girls, if you haven't checked that out, do go check that out. It's some very well put together content. But just talk about Perkins real quick. Firstly, congratulations to Perkins. Obviously, he won a little match of his own. Is that a concern for you when you have someone who historically has just been the fun guy at the table? He's wanted the invitations to all the high stakes games. He's never claimed to be a professional. He's obviously in circles with very good poker players. He can text you about a hand, or I don't know if he ever has, but he knows people in the poker world. And everyone, I guess, kind of doubted him when it came to the Landon Tice match, and he showed up for that. And is that a concern of yours now that he's kind of proven to himself that he doesn't need to be the soft spot necessarily, and that he does have it in him, that when he applies himself and he focuses and puts time in, that he could be a very tough opponent. You guys have a 20 buy-in stop loss, I believe. So those are swings that you've had before, I believe, in every match bar the Action Freak match, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so Perkins has now proven, that he can apply himself. He can sit down. He can study the solvers. He can approach poker with this new Bill Perkins, if you will. Is that a concern with you, given like the odds that you laid 2 years ago when you were like negotiating with him, and basically how he performed against Landon, and then the team that he has access to and the tools that he has access to?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a lower expectation about my edge than I did before the Landon Tice match, because I mean, it's obvious, I've spoken with Bill, I've seen him on podcasts. He's obviously hyper intelligent, but the question was, could he apply himself? Could he care enough to really apply himself? And
that's exactly it.
And he proved that he can. So yeah, I mean, I think even if he doesn't study any PLO now, his game will have gotten better just as a result of a deeper understanding of no limit hold'em. But also, yeah, he could study PLO in the same way and get a lot tougher there too. I mean, I still am confident that I could have the edge. But yeah, 20 buy-in swing is, as you mentioned, can happen very easily.
Come on, Bill, get off your boat. Let's do this. You've already proven once. We need some more of these heads-up matches on our screens. I feel like there's been a bit of a break, if you will. I guess it goes hand in hand with the return of live poker. Live poker seems to be, or at least it was, booming, especially around the World Series. But yeah, maybe if we go into like this 15th lockdown, I don't know, 17th variant, then Perkins will finally re-emerge. Just to kind of wrap up the whole Galfond challenge part of the discussion, I just want to know, is there anything that you would have done differently in hindsight? Fast forward 2 years, you came in rusty, if you will. You claimed to be rusty. I guess you definitely were, given the way the first match started. But yeah, you're running the company. But is there anything you would have done differently in terms of, like, firstly preparation, and then odds given and opponents chosen, and also, I guess, from like a business point of view, for the marketing for Run It Once, did everything turn out the way that you wanted it to, or would you do anything differently if you were given the chance to rewind the clock?
I mean, I think for the most part, the marketing aspect worked out. Obviously, now, I mean, I played Chance from Vegas on WSOP.com, and we still, streamed a bit of it on the Run It Once channel, or did we even at the end? I forget. But it's much less promotion when it's not on Run It Once, obviously.
Hang on, didn't I spend 4 months commentating on?
That was, but wasn't?
I can't remember.
But his channel was it on? Yeah. Anyways,
it doesn't matter. Anyways, yeah.
I mean, the main thing I would do differently is, which I kind of tried to do, but it was just hard to organize, but change the order of my opponents to not start off with such a tough opponent. Like, I think Vinny turned out to be the toughest of the opponents I played, and I started with him, which was rough, because I mean, if in a perfect world I would have 6 months to like have been playing in the Zoom pools and studying and improving, but realistically, it's tough with a family, like just leaving the country for that long. And it was a big ask of me to get Farron to drag Spencer along to Canada for 6 months at this point. And so, yeah, I mean, I could have performed better if I gave myself more time to study and actually played. I think that the studying without playing much, because I didn't really have an opportunity to play from the US, much heads up PLO, didn't work as well. I study better when I'm playing, and actually like most of my improvement that I did was during the course of the matches rather than beforehand or even, you know, in between matches.
That makes sense.
So that's the main thing that I would do differently. Otherwise, no. I mean, the way obviously the way that it all played out was, you know, it worked out very nicely, as the narrative was especially cool, and obviously a lot of luck was involved in that. But no, you know, I wouldn't change much, I would say. And I am hoping the hard thing is now being here. I mean, Spencer's in school. I can't just take, and seeing how long these matches take, I can't take extended trips like that to play long matches. And I like a long match. I don't like a, you know, 1 week or 2 week match where I can't really like get to know my opponent over time. That's my favorite part, is just playing the same person for a long period of time. So I'm hoping I can figure out a way to entice somebody to come play on my turf. And I'm hoping I can figure that out next year. But as of now, yeah, no big plans.
Listen, if there's any way Overbet Express boys can help you find some new challenges, let us know. We'd love to have you back on the screens. And Perkins, Jungle Man, come on, guys, leave a guy waiting. There's rings open.
Sure, but to be fair, I mean, like for Perkins, he has to let me know when he's going to be available, and I'm going to have to leave the country surrounding those dates. And True. I'm kind of asking him to play a lot during that time because, you know, I'm not in a place where we could just casually play 1 day a week. And then with Jungle, it's the same thing. We're in different countries most of the time. It's on me as much as it's on him to just, get it done.
All right. Well, all of you then.
All of us,
need to get it together, but make it happen. So just to show the guys and girls at home, that tough opponent, or the toughest opponent, as Phil was referring to, if anybody, there's that graph, which I mean, I don't even know what it resembles. It looks like the Andes, or the Pyrenees Mountains. I don't know. It's a pretty insane graph to look at, from 10k hands in being just over 900,000 euros down, and then the final 15k hand rally to just close that out is still to this day. And it was like the first time, at least in my poker career, that I'd ever seen something in the poker world get any coverage in like mainstream media outside of the World Series. So like, this was like a pretty huge thing when it comes to actual like publicity, right?
Yeah, no, I mean that's and it wouldn't have been had it not played out the way that it did. If it was just like the Action Freak match, for example, it wouldn't have been so dramatic and so compelling. But it did because it played out the way it did. Yeah, it got extra attention.
So let's jump into the good old days, the glory days. So for people that have only know you through the Galfond challenges in recent years, you're no stranger to the high stakes arena. You've obviously been playing for a very long time. But there are quite a few things about the old days that I want to discuss. Playing on live shows, private games, grinding online against some of the legends of the game. But let's just dive into pursuing poker initially for a little bit, and kind of that journey to where you were playing, for millions of dollars every time you sat down. And this was before the Galfond challenge. This is going back to when you were kind of like my age. How did that journey initially begin? Like when did you realize that, hey, I can actually make something of this poker thing? I feel like I'm pretty good at it. let's try and give this a shot? How did that all start for you?
So I was the poker. I mean, I played cards with friends growing up quite a bit. Not any game that I've seen spread in a casino, but just carnival games. And I enjoyed gambling. I wasn't particularly good. I mean, like we were all kind of the same. I wasn't thinking about it strategically. And I was in college, and a friend of mine from back home won a tournament on Party Poker for $35,000. And so it was the talk of our group of friends. And he actually reached out to me and said, Phil, I have been taking this kind of seriously. I picked up some books and have been studying the game. I think you'd be really good at this, so you should try. And so I did. Bought some poker books, started playing $10 sit and goes on Party Poker, and after not too long, I don't know, a matter of a few months, I think I was making $15 an hour playing sit and goes. And so that was then I had just gotten a job around that time on the side, while I'm in school. And then I just quit that. I was like, I'll just do this instead, play poker. And so, yeah, that was me as a, I don't know, semi-pro, I guess. And it wasn't until, I kept moving up the sit and go stakes. And then it was my junior year, I turned 21 and I went to play a couple of tournaments, live tournaments. It was like two 10K buy-ins. There was a WPT event and a WSOP circuit event in Tunica, Mississippi. And I was just excited. I like wanted to play on a big stage. And those were obviously like high buy-ins from him. I probably had, I don't know, I had under 100K definitely. So playing two 10K buy-ins is ill-advised. But I was just like, I remember sitting down because it got me so excited to play those. I remember sitting down and mapping out like, okay, well, if I'm making this much per hour now, if I just play this many hours per month, then I can go play these live tournaments like this often. Actually didn't end up doing that for some reason, but well, I know why I didn't. But it was after that I dropped out of school. So I min-cashed one. I broke even on the trip and came back and just didn't feel like going around to my professors and saying, hey, I missed the first week of school. I thought that I was going to come back and say, hey, I missed the first class. Can I have whatever I need to? And I just didn't want to do that. So
catch up.
I took the semester off, which then led to dropping out. And it was that summer that I went to my first World Series of Poker. And it was during that time, actually, between that January and May, that I transitioned to cash game player. So I switched from sit and goes to NL cash. It went from the mostly $200 sit and goes to $510 NL cash, because why not? Having never played NL cash. And but I mean, the games were really soft back then, so I was at least break even right away, pretty much. But yeah, then from there, it was just the way that I did it was similar to my approach to those live MTTs. Is I would take shots. I would build up a bankroll to take a shot at higher stakes, and then when it didn't go well, I would step back down and grind again, because I was just, that's what motivated me, was just like shooting up the ladder and like kind of like I don't know, leapfrogging the stakes that the progression that I should have taken. Moving up one game at a time, one stake at a time. I don't know. I wanted the chance at a fast score, I guess. And so I would grind it out. I'd play 5-10 a bunch, take a shot at 5,100, lose, drop back down, play 5-10 a bunch, do the same thing, rinse, repeat. And eventually one of them stuck. And then I was playing, 5,100, 100, 200. And there was a while where 100, 200 was my main game. And then eventually I moved up. And my first shot at 300, 600. It's so funny back then because game selection, I mean, like, it was a thing, but it was not a thing. And I didn't think about it the same way I do now. It was kind of more like a video game where you just go play the next level. And I remember my first time playing 300, 600. I was like, I want to try 300, 600. Who's sitting in the lobby? Oh, Phil Ivey. Okay. And so my first shot there was against Phil Ivey. and I got set over setted like the third hand, and then went back down to my 100 200 game. Yeah.
Nah. Oh man. Oof, that one's painful.
Yeah, it was.
Against Ivy himself, man. See, that sounds like a very common characteristical trait that you see in a lot of successful people. And I was recently rereading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's something that he would talk about when it came to trying anything out, whether it was like business, sports, whatever, would be just taking the L, like being okay with losing, like those shots that you're talking about, that 50, 100, and just saying, okay, this is my shot, losing, and then taking a step back and going straight to the drawing board and trying to think like, how do I make sure that next time I go in, I'm better prepared than first time around? And then again, taking an L and taking a step back and still continuing to do that. Like, could we just touch on that mindset, I guess? Because again, just to kind of use me as reference, something that I've struggled with whenever I've shot taken is kind of knowing my limits, I guess, is something that I've struggled with. And then also just, I guess from an egotistical point of view, being able to swallow your pride where you do get your ass handed to you against, tougher opponents. And for that, like, being okay, like, how did you deal with that when you were like moving up the ranks?
It's weird. It's weird because a lot of times people move up and they lose and they chase their losses.
Exactly. And,
yeah. That comes from the allure or the addictive aspect of gambling. But I think that the reason I took those shots is because I was a gambler. Gambling excited me, and I was like, I think I was prone to having a gambling problem probably. And so like, it's interesting that what made me step up was, I think in part, the gamble, but that I didn't have the aspect of that was like, okay, now I need to chase this and just, continue chasing until there were $0 left in my account. The only thing I can think of why that is because I was doing this all at a time that I hadn't spent any money. Like, I didn't have any real world money. This was just in my Full Tilt account. And I was still living as a broke college kid.
Doesn't have real world money.
Yeah. I was living, all my friends were broke college kids, and I was roommates with, I wasn't living in, Penthouse, and I was just, so like, it didn't, the chase, I didn't feel like, I don't know, I couldn't contextualize what I lost maybe. So I wasn't trying to get it back. It was just like, it was a game. It was a video game.
You hear that a lot from a lot of the elite, that it was always about beating the previous high score and just kind of like treating it as a game, like you said, as a high score. What was that like? Sorry.
It wasn't like, I want to win this money so that I can buy a car. It was the whole purpose of winning money was to play higher stakes. Like, that was the only goal. So when I lost, it was just like, okay, how do I get back to focusing on that goal? I was just playing to win buy-ins to bigger games.
I feel like that is almost unheard of nowadays. Maybe I'm a bit out of the loop. I feel like with live poker and social media and signaling online, and everyone wants to be seen as traveling to these locations and whatnot, and nice resorts and cars and everything. Maybe I'm just completely out of the loop, but I feel like maybe not everyone's got that mindset.
Yeah, anymore. And part of it is just not having spent the money, because I don't care about. I would actually prefer not to be flashy on. So like, but I do I've acquired expensive taste in a lot of things, and the creature comforts. To like I don't care if, and actually the opposite. I'd rather come across as if I didn't, if anything. But yeah, once you can buy some nice things, and you do, then like the money matters more to me now than it did at that point in my life. just because I've experienced it. I mean, like, I couldn't go back to, like, I mean, I could, of course, but like going back to living in the apartment that I lived in at that time, like that would be hard for me now. And of course, it was super easy then.
Yeah, of course. So was there a mentor, role model, or family member that you maybe disclosed the stakes that you were playing, or the account balance that kind of turned around on you and said, "Oh, hey, Phil, maybe buy a house, or maybe start spending some of the money rather than like leaving it in the account balance out of fear that Ivy or Isildur or who else was playing back then, Benjamin and some of the online guys have got to get it from you eventually."
No, I mean, my dad was always telling me to invest it, take some money offline and invest it. But yeah, nobody was pushing me to buy it. The only reason, I mean, it's kind of, well, not the only reason, but I ended up spending a lot of money, like way too much, on a home in New York. And it's because all my friends I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and everybody was leaving because they were graduating college. And all my friends were leaving. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be here if all my friends are gone. So some of them had moved to New York. So I was like, okay, I'll move to New York. And then was shopping for, I mean, I should have just rented when I got there, but I was like, I'm tired. I hate moving. So let's just buy a place. And then it was, and then what happened was I picked a place and I was like, okay, I'm going to put 20% down and then, whatever, have a mortgage, still have my bankroll. But then that was like, I think it was 2008 and there was the crash and like nobody would lend me money. Like it was like the mortgage crisis. So I had to put like 60 something % down and it was a big hit to my bankroll. And it was a bad decision in hindsight, for sure.
Is that a bad decision in terms of the real estate investment, or bad decision in the sense that it capped what stakes you could play because of variance and bankroll management?
It capped what I could play, and I was and that was like a time when games were great. That was the Thunderdome,
the glory,
right? That was Rail Heaven. There was an Ivy Thunderdome.
Rail Heaven.
Yeah, it was the Rail Heaven days, and so I was like, I mean, maybe it was a good thing, because what it made me do was basically I only played. It made me game select a lot because I was like, I can't play tough opponents at 501k because I can't stand huge swings. So it made me game select a lot more at that time than I would have otherwise. So perhaps it could have gone a lot worse if I had all the money in my account.
Yeah. So when you were moving up and shot taking, you're living in like a college dorm, like you said, you're in college, but most of the friends that you're surrounded with, broke living, like we all were. Do you mind me asking, like, so you're grinding online, because the way I have it like envisioned in my head is like a typical dorm, apartment or house complex or whatever, just like a group of lads, don't have a clue about the world or life or anything, just having fun, having a good time at college, and you're there with your laptop, like playing, poker. Was there like a lot of hype around whenever you would like sit down, or were you were like, I'm going to my room, or would your friends like watch you and get super excited when you'd win like a 1K or a 5K or a 10K pot? Or
no, nobody ever watched.
I just imagine nobody ever watched you play.
Nobody ever watched me play. So for my sophomore, junior, and senior year, or what would have been my junior and senior year when I dropped out, I was living with girls, 2 girls and then 1 girl, and they didn't care about poker at all. And then the following year, I moved into a house with 3 guys, but it was actually pretty big, and I had a bedroom and an office. So I had 2 bedrooms, and one was my bedroom and one was my office. So I paid whatever 2/5 of the rent. And no, I just closed my door, and nobody really knew anything about poker. They obviously knew that I played, and but yeah, no, nobody ever watched me play.
That's wild. That's actually good because whenever we kids 18, 19, the second anyone got their laptop out in the house to sit down for a session, all the boys would be around the screen and like rating and celebrating whenever you'd like make a deep run or win anything. But
what's interesting too, which is I found is uncommon. When talking to a lot, I basically never played on a laptop. I always had a desktop. I played on a laptop if I had to, like if I was traveling, but just always had desktop.
Had a desktop. So back then, obviously moving up, the Dark Destroyer, one of the biggest names, kind of crushed your dreams for a bit. Third hand in, set over set, battling Ivey at 300, 600. Let's talk a little bit about the other legends in the real Haven days. Like looking back, I'm thinking Victor Blom, Isildur, I'm thinking Benjamin and Antonius, Ivy, Dwan, Robel. I'm trying to think. I mean, this is obviously way before my time, but these were people that I would watch on, high stakes poker after dark and whatnot. For you, moving up, and you've kind of come from this like sit and go background to grinding, mid stakes cash to like slowly moving up. That journey of moving up to those stakes where these very famous and well-known people were playing. How did you kind of approach that? I mean, I'm imagining like a young Phil, a bit nervous and maybe not as confident stepping into a game like that compared to a 5-10. But was that necessarily like the case, or were you at this point very confident in yourself and your game, and you just saw it as another opponent, another challenger to take on, and you didn't let the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, like the star factor, or the fame factor kind of phase you when it came to sitting down with these big names?
Yeah, I don't, for some reason, maybe because it was online, the fame factor didn't affect me too much. There were definitely opponents I was more intimidated by, but it was kind of based on their game more than anything else. And I don't know, I never, kind of similar to what we were talking about early on here, I was never very confident. And I think that served me well because I was always questioning myself and my game. But I loved playing, and I loved figuring people out and like just hand reading is like my favorite thing. Oh, it still is. And I just loved the challenge of it. And I admittedly like to gamble a little bit. And so stepping up to play somebody, I was generally excited, a little nervous, excited, and just happy to be playing.
Talking. Sorry, go on. I was just going to say, talking of hand reading capabilities, there's one hand that I remember when you were doing the promotions for the Galfond Challenge matches, and you were battling someone on WSOP.com, I think, before flying out to play Veni. And there was I want to say a 4-bet. I'm not going to butcher the hand history. A 4-bet pot, you have aces, he has naked kings on a ace queen jack 10 board, and you literally just like, yeah, he just has kings here, just like naked kings, and then you make the call. And I just remember Twitch chat going wild. I remember it. I'm going to try and get the editor if we can. Do you mind if I find the hand, if I include it in this episode?
Yeah, go for it. No, I remember exactly what you're talking about. And I think what I said was something like, there are only a couple combos of like king XX double suited that's not the straight here, but I really think that's what he has. So
like if he just has the king high straight only, then he'd be very likely to pot and just get it in on the turn, put me to a decision. And if he, like, the only time he wouldn't be is if he had like king 10 or something, king jack, king queen jack, and I have queen jack and the ace in my hand, so I block so many of those potential like hands that want to string me along. So even though combinatorically it's really rare, because he's not like 3-betting king 7-4 single suited and calling my 4-bet, so I really do need him to have like king 5-4 double suited, king 8-6 double suited, etc. But I am just going to go for it and hope that he has those. And that is what he has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, and also there are a couple of again, prepping for this show, I was like reviewing some like hands that you played, like Poker After Dark and whatnot. There are a couple of times where, I mean, there was a fold. You folded like a king on a king 9-9-9 queen board or something like this.
Like that, yeah.
So you basically lose to aces, kings, queens, and quad nines, and like the hand reading abilities. Is that, I don't know. I feel like that's aptitude, right? Like that is that like a natural thing, or is that something that you feel like people can actually study to become really good at?
I think it's both. I think it's aptitude and practice, but it's just deductive logic, and I think a lot of it is, well, it's putting yourself in their shoes, and so I guess empathy in a way. And it's, I don't know how to say it in a way that actually doesn't make it sound more fancy than it is, but because it's not like, I'm not like doing some magical things here, but it is like getting to understand a player and getting to understand how they think, or your guess at how they think, and then trying to say, okay, well, this player that I kind of know based on what I've seen them show down, how would they react if they had this hand? Would they do that? How would they react if they had this hand? And it's just guessing based on what you know about them. Would they really do this? And every street, every action is a clue. And so it's like detective work. It's really fun.
Like putting pieces of a puzzle together.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I've always enjoyed it. That's always been, I think, the part of the game that I've felt I was the strongest. That's always been the strength of my game. It's never been having better fundamentals than my opponents. And actually, that was the part of the game that I was kind of afraid was going away with the advent of solvers, as I,
of course,
because like I had solvers had been out for years, like I don't know, 4 or 5 years before I studied one, and I was kind of afraid that this way of poker would, kind of, I'm struggling to find the word, but kind of invalidate or make obsolete my skill set. But I was pleased to find that I don't think it does at all. I just have to catch up with the times and keep using it.
Yeah. It was definitely something that was brought up a lot during all the matches from, Tuckman, Stapes, Joe Ingram, people that were in the booth were talking about your ability to adjust. And obviously you definitely proved that during the Galfond challenge. Just to go back to the live shows back then, because I remember reading a lot of articles when it came to preparing for this, and it seems like for quite a long time you were more well known by your online screen names than your actual name. Like people would put OMG Clay Aiken in brackets and Mr. Sweets in brackets because people knew those online screen names, but they didn't necessarily know Phil Galfond. And back then, a lot of the Poker After Dark, Highstakes Poker, it was a very closely knitted circle that not many of the online guys managed to kind of work their way into, bar, I'm assuming Durr always had a seat because he gave a ton of action. He was, I don't know the politics behind it all, but what I wanted to discuss was your time on these live shows and getting into those games and basically just like being a part of poker, like history and the boom. Like, what was that whole experience like for, an online player such as yourself to sit down with, let's take Doyle Brunson, for example, and some of those greats at a very young age?
It was definitely intimidating. Because I was a poker fan. Even as I was playing like relatively high stakes. I was still watching, like I was watching high stakes poker. I was watching WSOP, and I was a fan. And so, you know, these are celebrities that I watch on TV a lot. And so sitting in the game with them the first time, it was much different than playing against them online. And also I think just knowing that I'm being filmed, being on a stage, being, you know, I'm usually locked away in my office or my bedroom. It was definitely intimidating and scary. From a poker perspective, I was not nervous because like it was generally, I was playing in very tough games online for the time, and the games that I would sit in there were not as tough, but I was still very nervous, just being around them and wanting to make the most of my opportunity because I didn't get very many. So like it was extra important to me that I would perform well anytime I got a chance to be on one of those shows. And I think generally because of that, I did not. I think the nerves, you know, I was not playing my best generally. But yeah, I don't know. It was a weird time because online was kind of new, and Tom Dwan really kind of broke down the wall between. Like, he got himself on there, and then when he got himself on high stakes poker, had the performance of a lifetime. Everything went perfectly. I remember him texting me after filming, and he just said everything went exactly perfectly. Which is what it did when I watched it. Just every play he made worked, and obviously he's an extremely exciting player to watch. And I was doing things that none of those people were doing, and you know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But on his first season there, they just all worked, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I don't remember exactly, but I mean, I think I got on because of him. I think he made the introduction for me. He was always very generous with just trying to help his friends out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
go ahead.
You mentioned that he kind of like helped get you on to the show, but there's a lot of politics involved with, you know, these TV shows. Even today in 2021, these like soft lineups, if you will. A very few pros get invited on, and more often than not, it's the same pros that get the seats. So I just like, without, you know, not trying to turn this into a naming or shaming, just more so like a general discussion of the live shows and private games space. What do you think, or like why were you not necessarily kicked off, but you weren't invited back as often as, say, someone like Dwan, when, let's say, you know, skill-wise level, you were both very good at the time, and you were both good for the money, you were both aggressive. Like, what separated the two of you when it came to getting invites?
I mean, he was looser than I was. I was, especially like the first time I ever played on high stakes poker, I was very tight, and it was earlier in my career. Like I wasn't as good yet, and I was kind of I mean, I was actually being appropriately tight pre-flop, but I could have been a lot looser and gotten away with it for sure. I mean, I don't feel like there was any conspiracy there or anything. I was not that exciting, and it wasn't. And the other tough thing is, you know, like you said, they use our online names because we'd been seen so much on playing online. People would rail these games. But otherwise, we had no brand. Nobody knew about us. And these other players who, you know, were on TV playing WSOP and all these other shows during the boom, like the height of the boom, they were so well established that it was hard. Like, we just weren't that interesting, I think, to audiences, except for Tom got on and was extremely interesting. I think that I don't have a way to measure this really, but I think my level of fame was most impacted by, I forget what year this was, but I played, I went deep in the main event, WSOP main event. And there was one day, it was like day 4, day 5, where I was at the feature table, and they really focused on me that day, on ESPN. And I think that did a lot more for kind of awareness of me as a player than any of the like high stakes poker after dark appearances. And I think after that, I might have gotten some more invites as well, but my memory's hazy.
I'm trying to remember the year, but it's not.
Well, it was
I don't really.
Duhamel won.
Okay, right, yeah. Poker history
Yeah.
needs. I need to.
Yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Catch me out there. Yeah. So I mean, you just think it was just down to, just playing maybe a little bit too tight at the start.
Oh, that, and also, I mean, I think it's an uphill battle when you're on a show with a bunch of people that are poker celebrities and the people at home love.
Yeah.
And you show up and nobody knows who you are. And I think that you have to show up and have an amazing performance, either, poker wise or personality wise or both. I think Tom did that and really broke through because of that. And I mean, I didn't.
That's a interesting subject actually that you just kind of brought up, is the poker personality / celebrity. Why is it, in your opinion, that you think the players from your generation and those players that were obviously established at the time that you mentioned, like, was part of like the uphill battle to kind of get to that level, why are those guys still the celebrities in 2021? Like, why do you think, I guess, how do I want to phrase this question, the poker world is kind of, I don't know, there seems to be a lack of that poker celebrity nowadays.
We're still fighting an uphill battle because, I mean, essentially because after Black Friday, the money left, it left poker on TV and just poker media in general. I mean, people were getting, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I mean, what everybody was saying, like, people were getting bought in to high stakes poker, like $200K, full tilts, just paying their buy-in.
Wow.
And like, there was so much money from Full Tilt, Poker Stars, Ultimate Bet, whatever else, to advertise and just get, like, advertising on these TV shows was worth so much to them. And so it became, not only were they paying a lot of money to poker pros who then had more money to gamble in these spots, they're also funding the actual shows, either indirectly with, paying for commercials, but I think oftentimes directly, like producing the shows. And this was also, coincided with the height of people watching poker on TV. So all these people, all these characters and celebrities were established, and got, are really well known. And since then, not only are there fewer eyes on, poker TV shows, and, we got Poker Go making great content, but it's behind a paywall, and it's not at the scale that high stakes poker used to be in terms of viewership and things like that, I'm sure. So that not only is there's not the money in it there, but there's also less money in being like, it used to be really valuable to get on TV and potentially get a sponsorship deal. And they have a lot fewer of those going around these days. Obviously they still exist, but far fewer. And so people are not really willing. So the first part is, that, like, it's harder. There's not as much money to build up these characters. And the other thing is, it's hard to organize poker shows because there's not that extra EV in getting these pokers, like the people that they want on the shows, or maybe people you want in the games. They don't have extra money coming in as a result of being on the show. They don't have extra EV in being on the show because of a sponsorship deal they might get or already have. And so it all comes down to being like, a lot of people are concerned about their win rate in the game and their edge in the game. And therefore it's really delicate to create these lineups. Then one person drops out they'll plug in a Jason Kuhn, and now this person's like, oh, I don't want to play in this game anymore. And they drop out, and like, it's just really hard to get the games going, and make them exciting because there's just not enough, there's not enough money behind it, I feel like.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you take consideration what feels like now a lot more of the elite prefer to stay anonymous, or maybe not, anonymous behind the online screen name sense of the word, but more just very private, very like they like to lay low. Whereas, like you said, back in the heydays, it made sense to kind of try and get your name out there because the sponsorship deals that were being thrown around and the money that was there, you could make up for the EV of maybe someone breaking down 200 hands that you played and maybe getting like a read or something, or a sizing tell or something that you do like this. It's interesting because like two of your challenges that I found very, very surprising. Obviously Action Freak and Venny, both very relatively private guys. They lay low, they keep themselves to themselves kind of thing, and they took on a very public challenge where the only incentive, I guess, was the side bets and the chance to maybe play with a washed up Phil Galfond. Who knows whether that was part of the reason. But yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That does, like, now that you've said that, that does make a ton of sense. I mean, there are still some characters, Andrew Nemi, Brad Owen. I think they're doing great stuff for the poker world and game.
Yeah, well, that's what's kind of replaced. Twitch and YouTube are self-produced, and so a lot of the new poker celebrities have done it themselves because there's not the network putting money behind it and the poker sites putting money behind it, so they've had to do it themselves, and it's a lot harder to do. But we also have we didn't have all the different live streaming and ways to get your content out there 10 years ago.
There we go. Fantastic segue, Mr. Galfond. I was going to bring up this new content creation venture of your own. You've joined the ranks of the content creators. I mean, there are going to be people out there who are going to see this podcast and be like, did Henry and Phil both start their own podcasts and the only guests that they've had on so far are each other? Like what's going on here? So for people that don't know, firstly, you recently launched your own YouTube channel, where you are looking to kind of just help people, if you will, which is something that, historically has been something that you've done. You created training videos from a very early stage in your career, that transitioned into building Running Once training. And now, 2021, you've launched this YouTube project. Could you maybe go to a little bit of detail about what your plans are within that space? Is that just maybe a passion project out of boredom that you haven't got any matches at the moment? Or do you think this is something that you're seriously going to, dive into and potentially become the next Brad Owen or Andrew Nemi, or who knows?
Well, I mean, it's something, like you were saying, it's something that you were implying with this podcast, you've probably wanted to do it for a little while. You've thought about doing it before. And the same thing is true for me on YouTube. I've thought about starting a channel for years. And the reason that I never did is because, well, A, I didn't have a lot of confidence that kind of my persona would lend itself well to the YouTube platform. And then B, I didn't have the time. And it wasn't until, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is doing like the producing and editing. Shout out to Thomas. He kind of convinced me that A, I can just be myself and we'll find out if people like it or not. There's not really, as long as I'm being myself, there's not any harm in trying that. And then B, we've worked really hard at doing it in a way that we can create some content that hopefully people like, and it's not taking me, 15 hours a week to do so. And so the reason that I only have one podcast out, the one with you, is because it was, I know this happens anyways, but it's lower viewership than like the shorter videos, and it takes as long to record as like 10 of the 15 of the shorter videos. But I still plan to do more. But it is, it's like I've been extra busy this year, and it's been hard to push myself to get another one on the calendar, I guess. But the YouTube thing as a whole, yeah, I've been wanting to do it. I was held back for those reasons. I I think we've got a good enough, like, I really like the way that we figured out to create stuff. It's just a matter of, you know, are people liking it enough? And I mean, people seem to like it. The comments are great. We got some viewership. Obviously, you know, those things take a long time to build up. But I need to think of other types of content to make and see, kind of experiment, see what really resonates with people and what doesn't.
Yeah, the YouTube algorithm is it can be brutal. It's like a love-hate relationship. Same with Twitter, same with Instagram, and yeah, I mean we've obviously spoken on the subject of YouTube in general, and yeah, I mean with podcasts, just like completely off topic, I guess. I'm kind of curious to see how this performs for us as well for Overbet Express. I think the best way, not to like give out all the alpha strategy tips for YouTube, but I think the thing that makes sense is like pre-hype around a podcast. So getting a guest on and clipping, you know, 4 or 5 really interesting 30-second clips, letting people know that, hey, this date, this time, we're going to drop the show live, gives people a chance to find it. Because the way the YouTube algorithm works is you can have an absolute banger of a video, right? And it can rack up a ton of views a week after you've released it. But if within like the first, I think it's like the first like 3 hours of you releasing the video, performance-wise, if you haven't got people searching for you on YouTube or clicking the links that you share or whatnot, YouTube will then take that video and say, okay, this content isn't any good, therefore we are not going to push it as recommended to people and whatnot. And it's crazy, man. We've been taking some deep dives ourselves, and our numbers have kind of dropped off a bit as well. We've dropped the ball a little bit, and we're working on YouTube strategy at the moment with the team. But yeah, I mean, I think anything you kind of invest your time into is going to end up working, especially the content that you are like trying to put out, where how do I want to phrase this? Like you're putting out very valuable information, and that's something actually I wanted to bring up is, you know, this whole giving out free information, if you will, and helping people instead of it being behind a paywall. Like, isn't there like a conflict between your YouTube channel project and Run It Once training, like with this information that you're giving out?
The way that I'm viewing it is that they have different kind of target audiences. And when I am making a YouTube video, I'm thinking of, I mean, generally non-professionals and not even semi-pros, but enthusiasts, people who are interested in poker. I mean, to some that are playing it semi-professionally, but I'm trying to give kind of advice and things that I think, you know, if you've been playing professionally for 5 years, you mostly already know. Obviously, you know, I'll say some things that you might have heard different or whatever you haven't thought of, perhaps, hopefully. Yeah. But I have a different audience in mind. And then, you know, behind the Run It Once paywall is very advanced strategy, like the kind of stuff that if I put it on YouTube, 90% of the people watching won't know what I'm talking about, I think. So
that makes sense.
That's the approach I took now. And we'll see. I mean, I think, so I did one video that was reviewing the final hand of the Veni challenge, and I made it a little bit like it was strategy, so closer to Run It Once, but I made it a little bit lighter on, you know, I guess I spoke more slowly. But it wasn't, I thought it was going to be very popular. It wasn't very popular. So I don't know. I want to just keep trying things and stick to making videos that I enjoy the process of making, and just see what happens. And I'm kind of viewing it as, I intend to keep doing it. I view it as a side project that, you know, I'm not obsessing every day or every week or every month about how do I get my numbers up and how do I do this, because it's just, I'm going to put stuff out, and I'd obviously prefer to be smart about it, and probably would be wise to talk to you more about it and listen to some tips. But I'm just going to put stuff out and start building up slowly, and not make that a main focus, I guess.
I mean, it sounds like the target demographic that you're aiming for, like, feels like something that's going to be a huge success eventually. Like it's just going to be about being consistent and putting out content, because like, and this isn't me saying that, you know, only America has recreational players, but every time I come to Vegas or America and, you know, go to these live stops, like I don't know whether it's just because I don't see them in Europe, but people in America had grandparents that taught them how to play stud when they were 5. They had Thanksgiving poker nights. Like poker in America is like a game. It's like a hobby for families, and like people don't necessarily see it as gambling. Whereas I feel like in Europe, the association with poker is gambling, money, casino, etc., etc. So it's not as family friendly. It's not as PG. Obviously, make sure if you are going to play poker, you're over 18 or whatever. Disclaimer, so I don't get sued. But something I've seen, like there's just so many people in America that just love the game of poker. They don't necessarily take it seriously. Obviously, America is an extremely wealthy country. Average salary compared to like Europe and whatnot is, you know, 3-4x. So you have so many more people and reach of players that can afford to take a weekend trip to Vegas and lose $2,000 playing 1-3 or 2-5 for the weekend, and it won't bother them. Like, okay, from a competitive point of view, it will, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna. Whereas in Europe, average salary in a lot of countries is around that ballpark figure. You know, I think in London, in the UK, it's like, I want to say £28,000 a year, which is around about $35,000. So for you to kind of target that demographic of hobby player, if you will, poker enthusiast, to kind of give them a little bit of insight into what they could potentially work on, but without getting too technical. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I can see how that wouldn't necessarily conflict with, you know, running one's training.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
sense.
having fun with it so far, so we'll see how it goes.
Best of luck with it,
Thank
man.
you.
I'll definitely we'll get some links here. Chat, go and check out Phil's, you know, chat of yours. So where did this inspiration come? Because I mentioned, you know, throughout your career historically, you've done training and whatnot. Even when you were playing at a very high level back in the heyday, you were putting out training videos, which then led to Run and Watch Training. Was there never a point where someone like, I don't know, Durr, for example, came up to you and said, "Hey, Phil, you know, you're battling Solsky and you're recording your screen and then you're giving your insights and breaking down hand histories. Maybe this isn't the best idea to, you know, release these training videos when he's going to dissect them, or your opponents are going to be able to dissect them?"
I mean, I know he never wanted to do it, at least as I recall, but he didn't discourage me. So for a long time I wanted to do it. I thought of, like with YouTube, I wanted to do it for a while before I did, and I started pretty early on. I started writing strategy articles for Bluff Magazine, and I really enjoyed that because I guess because I thought I was good at it and I liked being good at something. So I thought I was good at explaining concepts in a way that people would understand, that a lot of people can understand. And so I started writing articles, and it was actually, you know, it was funny. I didn't get around to making training videos for a long time. And then I made one. So Card Runners reached out to me, and Tom, actually. They took us to dinner and talked about us making training videos for Card Runners, and said basically, why don't you make like a demo video and we'll see how our members like it, and then, you know, if they like it, we'll talk. Deal. And Tom didn't make one. I made one, and I had no idea what to expect, like in terms of an offer, and I actually don't even remember what I was offered, but I remember being like, oh, this will be fun. I'll do this. And for some reason, the fact that they asked me to do it, like I thought about doing it, but never did. I had hesitations. I don't want to share my strategy. I don't want to, et cetera. And then they asked me to, and I was like, yeah, okay. I don't know why. And then I made one. It was well received. They made an offer I just wasn't at all interested in. And so then I didn't do it again for a while. But that kind of making that video there was a really great response, and I enjoyed that. I guess enjoyed also, feeling like I was good at teaching. And then it was, years later when I started doing it again, just because an opportunity came along that I liked. But I don't know. I had that concern for sure when I started. And my reasoning was, so back then, I mean, there were no solvers, obviously, but there were a lot of players who played in a way that was very like trick based, I would say, where like on a paired board, when they check raise the flop, they were bluffing 90% of the time, something like that, And I never did that. I was hand reading, and I was trying to I wasn't trying to be GTO. I didn't know what that was, or maybe I did, but I was always really big on balance, and okay, if I'm gonna bluff with this hand, I need to make sure that I play it in a way that is similar to how I'd play my value range. And so what I told myself is, some of my friends, I would not recommend that they make videos because their edge based on their strategy goes away. But if I'm doing my job and I am balanced in these spots, then I'm not really giving away something that can be taken advantage of. I'm just teaching. And I didn't feel like it affected my results, but it's obviously hard to tell.
Disclaimer, in 2021, people check raising on paired boards, it is still a bluff 90% of the time. That hasn't changed. I'm just going to put that out there. Having that feedback loop, if you will, because I guess it's the same with anything, right? Like we discussed it earlier on in the show. But having that feedback when you do try something new, you do dip your toes into, waters that you haven't been in before, and the feedback that you get is positive, or the majority of feedback is, well received. It then obviously incentivizes you as a human being. It makes you feel good about the stuff that you're doing, and that makes sense.
We're all human, and it feels good to get compliments, so
100%.
Feels good to do things you're good at.
I'm never going to do another podcast if I see just one negative comment in the YouTube comments. So, guys, make sure you leave positive comments below. But Phil, it's coming up to the 2 hour mark. I know you're a very busy man. You've got a family to attend to. Something I want to do with my podcast is kind of wrap things up in a Jay Shetty style. I don't know if you know who Jay Shetty is, but he has a really awesome podcast. He wraps things up with a final fast 5 questions, if you will, where we're going to ask you a question, and then you just try and respond with a single word or very short sentence answer, and then we'll wrap this up. So first one, I guess, is maybe not the best question to ask for a single word or short sentence answer, but if you want to try and keep it as brief as possible, would be what piece of advice would you give to the 21-year-old version of yourself if you could?
I guess I would just say, keep doing what you're doing. It's going to be okay.
Love that. Okay. All right. If you could create a poker law or rule that everybody had to follow, what would it be?
That's a really hard one. I guess it would be half the time you can't game select.
Half the time. Oh, okay. Go on. Do you mind we maybe go a little bit deeper than that on that one?
Well, I think it's funny. I responded to a tweet yesterday, I think, from Negreanu, who was talking about how, if you don't play against tough competition, you're not going to improve your game. And I really believe that. I did that kind of my whole career on and off. Like I said, there was that period where when I played the highest stakes, I game selected because I accidentally cut off most of my bankroll. But I think it's really useful for people to challenge themselves. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like a prisoner's dilemma, where if we're all game selecting so much, then like the action's going to be bad all around. And if we're all not, the games will be more plentiful, which will make it more fun for players when they come in because they have more options and because people aren't being nitty and like sitting out as soon as they leave. So I think it would be a situation where if I could snap my fingers and everybody's just like playing more, and I said only half the time because, you know, I respect you needing to grind out your edge and not withstand as much variance, etc. But I think a little more of action would go a long way.
That's very fair. That's very fair. And it's definitely an issue still in 2021. Obviously, I've seen it even online. You know, the higher stakes, people like snaps it out the second, you know, the perceived spot leaves, and it can be very predatory, obviously. And I think, you know, you hear a lot of pros complain about like the private game scene in America, and I can't get an invite and whatnot, or I can't get a seat. But then you're like, well, are you actually surprised that you can't get a seat? Like, if you look at the way the pros treat the recs, you know, online and live when it comes to bum hunting and like snap sitting out and, you know, all of this, are you surprised that the recreationals, the wealthy businessmen have created an ecosystem where, you know, the money stays between them? Like, it's not surprising. And the thing is like, for professionals, if the sources dry up, then, you know, less and less people turn pros. So I totally agree with that. I love that. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned in the last 12 months?
I think I've learned I need to stop projecting so much onto other people. Well, that's the short answer.
Okay,
basically, assuming when people say things and the way people respond to things will be the same, like, way that I would with my personality makeup and my background, you know.
I love that. I've really been struggling with that recently, and it's something that I'm trying to work on as well, especially with like the Overbet Express like brand, you know, group of guys who is trying to put out content and come together. And there are definitely times where, you know, I'm just like, oh, well, isn't this obvious? How do you not know that this is what should be done in this spot from like a, I don't know, business point of view? And just, I guess that comes down to assuming, right? Like assuming that other people should know. Looks like we've got some people in the background. I do apologize about that. Something going on. So I love that one. What's happening in the poker space that is exciting you for the future of poker, if anything? I hope there's something. Is there something in particular?
I mean, heads-up challenges are becoming more popular, and I mean, I think slowly but surely, poker in the U.S. is coming.
That sounds very exciting. And last question, Phil, I'll let you go, is your favorite person lifetime to have battled against? It could be from way back in the day or recent times.
It just has to be Victor Blom, Isildur.
I wanted to have a bet against the boys when I teed that question up. I was just, it has to be Victor, surely. I mean, some of the stories that are out there that can be found. I mean, I don't know what he's up to nowadays, but whatever he was up to back then seemed very fun and exciting. And that kid, man.
He's so talented, and it was a different kind of challenge playing against him because like he had no like game selection or fundamentals, but he's just so smart, and like usually. I don't know. He was the hardest person to stay a step ahead of and to try to guess how he was going to react next. He was the hardest. It was the biggest challenge for that. And like, had he had better fundamentals, or had he had the same fundamentals that I did, I wouldn't have had, I think, a great shot. But because he didn't, I would win EV in all the spots where he would just spew money. And then I would lose EV back when he was a step ahead of me in the guessing game. But I had fun, you know, taking that challenge on.
Trying to figure him out. Yeah, I can imagine. Like, was he the type of person where, you know, I'm only like assuming here, would like be making adjustments within, you know, a few hands, like based off of like small pieces of information that he'd only had a small sample on.
Yep. Oh yeah. Him and Ivy are the only two that I've played a lot with online where I felt like they were definitely getting the better of me in the leveling war. They just so quickly would make an adjustment where I'd be in a hand and I'd be trying to hand read it and I'd be like, okay, there's no way he would try to do this right now with this hand. Yeah.
Oh man, fantastic. So Phil, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and thank you so much once again for agreeing to doing this. And yeah, I guess we both are 1 for 1 on podcast guests, and hopefully in the near future, is there anyone that you got in your site that you think you would come on and be a good fit for the show, or any hints?
No, I don't have any plans. I need to. So in ours, I linked a survey for people to fill out if they wanted to be on to talk about like their career, and I got some responses, and some of them are good. Yeah. And I actually need to get back to them and tell them why I haven't responded yet and why I'm being slow. But I think I wanted to go with one of those next rather than like one of my friends.
Okay. And the other way around, is there anyone that you think from like your generation that could come on and tell some pretty insane stories that you think I should try and reach out to and get on?
I would love to hear. So one player that was a legend from my generation, who's still around, but like was not in my circles, and I don't really know a lot of backstory of, is Prahlad Friedman. I'd love to hear him tell stories about the early days.
Okay. All right. Well, Friedman, if you see this, if you're out there, DMs are open, dude. Love to get you on. I mean, this would be a whole different story for me because I don't know Friedman that well, so I don't know him at all. So yeah, I'd love to sit down with someone and hear their story. But yeah, once again, as you can see in the background, it looks like the house has woken up. It's like 8 a.m. now. 8 a.m. So these 13-hour time zone different podcasts. But I really appreciate you coming on and giving your time to me and to the boys and the team, obviously, and for the people that watch this as well. Thank you so much, and best of luck with the YouTube venture. Obviously, let us know if there's anything we could do to help. I would love to be involved. And yeah, I guess, what is it? It's December now. So to leave it on a positive note, to enjoy Christmas and New Year's celebrations and Spencer's birthday.
Yep. Thank you. You too. Yeah.
31st of December or 1st of January?
31st of December,
New Year's Eve? Yeah. There we go. Fantastic stuff, man. Thank you so much once again, Phil. Really do appreciate that. And thanks,
Henry. Always a pleasure.